Hi everyone, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about why I personally think a keto diet can actually work really well for a lot of people when it comes to improving their skin. Because this is something I experimented with myself quite heavily on and off over recent years. And it really did seem to help me to get my acne more under control. And initially I really thought, okay, maybe carbohydrates themselves are just the issue. Because you hear this all the time online, right? There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that when people dramatically reduce carbs, suddenly their skin improves, breakouts improve, redness goes down, the skin becomes more balanced, and so on. And then naturally you start thinking, okay, maybe carbs are just bad for us. But the more I looked back at the whole period later on, the more I started realizing that before the start of the keto diet, my eating habits were very convenience-based. And I do not even necessarily mean just obvious junk food all day long. It was more just this very modern style of Western eating that I think a lot of people live in now without even thinking about it much anymore. Bread rolls with processed toppings, takeaway foods, ready-made meals. Then we have meal boxes, sushi, things that are quick and easy and already prepared. And honestly, that was very normal for me at the time too. So then when I suddenly switched to keto, it was not just that carbohydrates disappeared. My entire relationship with food changed at the same time. Because suddenly I actually had to think about what I was eating. And a lot of the advice online and in books also completely changed the way I started thinking about food overall. So naturally, my diet changed too. I mean, I could not just randomly grab convenience foods anymore. I started cooking more, paying more attention to ingredients, eating simpler meats overall. And now looking back at all the pictures and tracking I have done over the last couple of years, I really think that was probably one of the biggest reasons my skin improved during that time. And not just because carbohydrates disappeared forever, but because keto kind of interrupted this very passive, convenience-based style of eating I had before. And I honestly think this is also why keto can work so well for many people, especially if somebody is coming from a very processed food environment beforehand. Because even if the person initially only focuses on reducing carbohydrates, what often happens at the same time is that they also massively reduce processed foods overall without even realizing it. And I think that overall shift alone can already have a huge impact on things like inflammation, breakouts, puffiness, skin texture, rosacea, and skin health overall. But at the same time, over the years, my perspective on keto also became much more balanced. Because eventually, I also realized that keto itself can become extremely processed too, especially nowadays. Keto snacks, keto desserts, keto replacement foods. And then you can end up in this weird situation where somebody is technically doing keto while still relying heavily on processed foods all day long. So eventually I realized that for me personally, carbohydrates themselves were never really the core issue. I think the much bigger issue was the overall food environment and this constant passive convenience style eating pattern I had fallen into before. And I still think keto can be an incredibly powerful tool because it kind of shifts your mindset into becoming much more aware of what you're eating and forces people to completely rethink the way they eat overall. But at the same time, I just no longer think the real benefit always comes purely from removing carbohydrates themselves. So yeah, looking back at it now, I honestly think keto helped me a lot. I just no longer think the reason was as simple as carbohydrates bad. I think the much bigger shift was that it completely changed my awareness around food and interrupted a very passive way of eating that I had fallen into before. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!